70,000 people ready to kill me. I mean, literally, some of them ready to kill me. They were afraid for me on that night.
Were you booed?
Oh, yeah, booed like you wouldn't believe.
Blame his income tax for that. But today, at 84, he may be New Jersey's most loved senior statesman, remembered instead for building the Meadowlands, saving Atlantic City, rescuing the Pinelands. An intimate interview with Brendan Byrne, up next on Due Process.
He's gone from reviled to revered, from politically challenged to particularly loved. It's been more than 25 years since he wrapped up his 8 years as governor. But Brendan Byrne is still a force in New Jersey politics, and in his 80s, a force of nature. I'm Raymond Brown.
And I'm Sandra King. And when my friend and former governor turned 84 last week, it seemed a good time to celebrate the still extraordinary Brendan Byrne. With twice the energy of people half his age, he once outdistanced those who ran against him. He's now outlasted his once very vocal critics. And since Brendan Byrne doesn't know the word retirement, it was only natural that we sat down in the law office he shares with a half-century of memorabilia. And only natural to start with how he would like to be remembered.
Guy who changed a lot of things in New Jersey. Starting from day one, in the governor's chair, I started changing things. One of the first things I had to do as soon as I sat down in that chair was to solve the gasoline crisis where everybody was backed up at the gas station and it was chaotic, and we had to do something. And we did the odd, even gas approach, establishing some order to your availability of gasoline.
Of course, one of the many situations in which no one was happy, even if you eased the situation, it wasn't what they wanted. They didn't want there to be a gasoline crisis.
They didn't want to be a gasoline crisis.
There you were in the middle of it.
But at least...
Not the last time.
No, but that was one of the first times. And then we had to go right from there because I had become governor in the midst of Watergate. And I had to deliver the message that things were going to be different. And they were different in a lot of ways, one of which was I made everybody who was part of my administration file a financial statement.
That hadn't happened before.
That had not really happened before. Right away, we had to do it. There was no settling in. We had to do things right away.
Ethics questions came naturally to you. You may have been elected because it was said that you were the guy who couldn't be bought. Said by organized crime people that you were the guy who couldn't be bought. You were the prosecutor in Essex County. Was that part of what you felt to be your responsibility as you walked in that door?
That's really the reason I became a candidate for governor, because the Democratic Party had a number of candidates in 1973. And with a couple of weeks to go, literally less than 2 weeks to go, they settled on me as the guy who could carry the message that this was going to be different from Watergate. And so that had to be an early priority.
Being prosecutor, how did that train you for the job? Was it on the job training?
One of the things that being prosecutor does for you is makes you make decisions quickly. I mean, your prosecutor is in court or has people in court every morning, every day, immediately. And so you have to make those decisions. And when you're trying a case, you got to make decisions every few minutes that determine the outcome of a trial. And so I think the fact that you're disciplined to do that is important.
Did Did you expect, as you were coming up as a Democrat lawyer, that you might actually be governor of New Jersey?
Well, the answer is no, but keep in mind that back in the 50s when Governor Minor was governor, I was for several years his secretary. And so I was every day in the governor's office with him. As a matter of fact, when I became governor in my own right in '74, I said to the president the first day in office, I was walking around looking for the governor, because I had spent several years being Minor's right-hand man.
Of course, you came from a political family.
Sort of local politics.
When you walked into that governor's office looking for the governor before somebody told you it was you, what else was on your agenda? These are the things I have to make happen in this first term.
Well, first of all, I think we had to reform the taxation system. We had to do something about funding the schools. And I had gone through the campaign by hedging on that. And everybody thinks I was a coward, and maybe I was.
Were you prepared when you proposed an income tax to have the kind of reaction that you got?
Not quite. I knew that it was unpopular. And as a matter of fact, for years, governors had been toying with an income tax or even proposing an income tax. Dick Hughes, one of my predecessors, proposed it, got nowhere with it. And Bill Cahill proposed it, and from his own assemblyman got 4 votes. So I knew that it was a tremendously unpopular thing to do. I mean, to ask a legislator to vote for any kind of tax, and income taxes especially. And by the way, in New Jersey, we used to have a statewide newspaper called the Newark Evening News, and they were hysterical.
So you knew there was going to be negative reaction.
Sure.
But the amount of vitriol that was thrown at you in a very personal way, was that shocking?
A little bit. As a matter of fact, the first day that there was an income tax collected from people in New Jersey, it was the day we opened the Meadowlands racetrack. And that day we had 70,000 people at what should have been the highlight of my career, opening the Meadowlands.
You made that happen.
We made it happen. It would not have happened if my opponent had won that election. But anyway, 70,000 people ready to kill me. Everybody forgets how unpopular I was in the good old days. Remember the poll that showed that 96% of the people in New Jersey knew who I was, and 4% thought I was doing a good job.
Were you booed?
Oh, yeah, booed like you wouldn't believe. And rightly so. I mean, I would have booed myself, because this is income tax, nobody wanted it. But nobody had another way of funding the schools, and we had to fund the schools. Matter of fact, we ultimately had to close down the schools because we hadn't resolved to fund them.
You're the kind of guy who everybody likes. You're used to You're used to being liked. To get that kind of hatred directed at you, did you just say, well, you know, this is now the arena I'm in, I've got to get past it? Or did you say, I'm going to win these people back over?
Well, I thought I was going to win them back over. As a matter of fact, one of my great memories is in that income tax fight. I went one day to present trophies to the high school wrestlers at the Jadwin Gym in Princeton, and I was handing out the trophies. I was being booed.
Your alma mater.
I was being booed.
And you were booed.
And I was being booed. And a couple of weeks later, I got a nice letter from somebody who said, I was in that audience and I did the booing. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, and that fella actually did a commercial for me when I ran for re-election. So that people do come around, and I think people now are not a bit upset with me. I mean,
forgot.
ironically, they're upset with Jim Florio for raising it and not so upset with me for imposing it.
You mentioned the Meadowlands. One of the great achievements of your tenure?
Yes, I think the fact that two things happened in my first term that changed the image of New Jersey. One was building the sports complex in the Meadowlands, and the other was legalizing gambling in Atlantic City. And those two things made New Jersey a destination in itself. It was hard to see New Jersey that way before those two items. And so I do take credit. Atlantic City would not have happened either. First of all, no other governor would have done it. And Tom Kaine will tell you he vigorously opposed it. And Bill Cahill damned me till he died for Atlantic City. So it could not, that's one thing, could not have happened without me.
Organized crime is not welcome in Atlantic City, and I warn them again, keep your filthy hands out of Atlantic City, keep the hell out of our state.
Do you have any mixed feelings about how Atlantic City turned out?
No, I have mixed feelings that we haven't accomplished as much as we should have, that it's not perfect, that there are still crummy places on the boardwalk, but think of what Atlantic City would be today without casinos. Asbury Park is just coming out of that stage where it was virtually abandoned. As a matter of fact, before we did casinos in Atlantic City, we looked at other opportunities and other alternatives. And we actually went out, somebody went out to see the Disney people. And the Disney people said, you want us to put a Disney World in Atlantic City? We don't make money with Disney World in Florida until after Thanksgiving. And you want us to do it in 3 months in Atlantic City. We couldn't do it. And so going for casinos was really the only alternative.
Did you, though, get the payoff financially from the casinos that you had hoped? Did the state get the windfall that
I think
the
it is.
casino interests were telling us we were going to get before we got casino gambling?
Well, I don't think we ever intended or ever expected to get a huge windfall from gambling. We expected to get a profit from it. We do get a. South Jersey is thriving now. And South Jersey is thriving because of casino. People want simple solutions to everything. People want Atlantic City to be what Vegas is. And Vegas isn't everything Vegas is either. Like Yogi Berra said, I didn't say all the things I said.
Friend of yours.
Yeah, great guy.
You didn't get your name on Atlantic City, but you did get your name on the arena at the Meadowlands for a while.
Yeah.
What happened?
It stayed on that arena for a long time. And people still come up to me and say, I still call it the Brendan Byrne Arena.
Christy Whitman decided to take it down, sell the naming rights.
Well, she thought we could get some money by selling the naming rights, which is a fashionable thing to do. Christy Whitman was not my #1 fan because I had insisted that she keep Bob Mulcahy in the executive director's or president's spot for 3 years because I was on the Sports Authority then. Tom Kaine had put me on there, and I thought it would be a huge mistake not to let Bob Mulcahy continue to run it.
I remember you telling me that you took your grandchildren before your name came down.
Well, I took Brendan Byrne III up and had his picture taken.
To show them.
Yeah.
How personally injured, how hurt were you by that change from Byrne to Continental?
It depends on who you ask. If you ask Ruthie, she thinks I was hurt. And she was hurt. If you ask me, I thought it was, part of the inevitability of life. So you don't have your name on it anymore. I got a farce now. Did you know that?
Ladies and gentlemen, the Brennan T. Byrne State Forest. Oh my God.
As a matter of fact, I think that of all the accomplishments, and we had a lot of them, we really did have a lot, of all the accomplishments, the one that was not inevitable was saving the Pinelands. And nobody had thought of it. Nobody was committed to it. I had to drum up my own support for saving the Pinelands.
And why was it important enough to use your political capital to do that?
Because it kept 20% of New Jersey out of development. And by God, we've got the most densely populated state in the whole United States. And to have 20% of it restricted was a major accomplishment. And I think it inspired things like the Highlands and the coastal protection, so that there's parts of New Jersey that are not concrete.
How does it feel to have your name on a forest?
I love it. I get down there once in a while. I used to go canoeing there, but my back hurts me now, because you don't get any support when you're canoeing. And try it.
You mentioned, and it hurts my back. You mentioned canoeing. You and I have played tennis. You're a golfer. You're a walker. And still active in all of this sports and athletic activity that's really been a big part of your life.
Well, I've always been interested in sports. And, you know, they have a sports writers' luncheon every late January, early February in New Jersey, the New Jersey Sports Writers. I have been going to that ever since I became governor. And I'm interested in seeing these kids move on. As a matter of fact, when I first started going to the sports writers' luncheons, I took my daughter and they wouldn't let her in. Now I go to it, and the majority of the recipients of honors are women. And I think that in itself inspires me to know and realize that New Jersey is moving along and becoming more and more enlightened. Of
course, you're not only a participant, you are also an enthusiastic observer of sports.
Oh yeah, and we've had some good sports teams in New Jersey. And we've got. I'm a little disappointed that the Giants have not at least had some recognition of the fact that they're in New Jersey.
When we look at your wall here in the office, we see lots of sports figures who've been your friends over the years. Some of us also remember when you had a fight of sorts with Muhammad Ali in the ring.
We went 2 rounds to a draw. This was for charity. We're in the ring and we're sparring around. And he says to me, "Throw a right." And I said, "Hey, I'm left-handed." So he said, "Throw a right." So I throw a right, he goes down. And that was the picture. And for him to be willing to be on the floor with me, standing over him, is the symbol of a great sportsman.
Do you have sports heroes?
Oh yeah, Dizzy Dean. Back when I was a kid, but I'm a great admirer of Bill Bradley, who was playing basketball for Princeton and for the Knicks. You know.
Political heroes?
Everybody my age, I think, who's at all inclined to be a Democrat, has John Kennedy as a hero. I have several of his speeches almost memorized. I have for instance, the last paragraph of the speech he was going to give in Dallas memorized. Also, Adlai Stevenson, I thought, I'm not sure how good a president he would have been. Maybe he was too cerebral. But he was an inspiration, and I would have liked to have seen him as the President of the United States.
You mentioned my friend and your wife, Ruthie. 14 years. hard to believe it's been 14 years, but I know it's been 14 really good years.
It has been, and I'm very proud of her and appreciate her putting up with me, because I get impatient.
Did I leave my phone
And she calls me on it.
Did you happen to notice it as you walked out?
Why,
Say
no.
yes. Oh, say yes, even if you don't mean it, say yes.
She puts up with me. She's a very bright lady, and people in New Jersey, including the Governor Corzine, recognizes that she's a leader, and has called on her on several occasions to do critical things for her.
Has Ruthie changed your thinking on some issues? I know Ruthie is an ardent feminist. She's got very strong ideas of her own. Any areas that she's moved you from one position to another?
Well, I think I've always been a feminist. And, you know, in my day as governor, I had more women in key positions and in different, I mean, I had a woman transportation commissioner for a while. So she's bolstered my commitment to women. I mean, she thinks half of all of the, or maybe all of the jobs ought to go to women for a while because men had them for so long. I don't quite go all that way with her.
Ruthie is fond of saying that you got into so much trouble as governor because you did so much. Now, that's coming from clearly a biased party, but is that a fair thing to say?
Well, there's no question that when you change things, you develop enemies, and if you leave things alone, you don't stir up anything.
Having been in out in public with you, I see how people respond to you enormously warmly, enthusiastically, remembering what we talked about earlier, how you were such a despised figure for a while. Has all of that just receded into the past because you are now, I think, a much loved senior statesman?
That may be, but you've got to accept that what I did was controversial. And when I was reelected by 300,000 votes, more or less, my approval rating among the people in New Jersey was 37%, nowhere near 50%. And so I've been trying, and every once in a while, when things look good, I remind myself that in 1977, 888,000 people voted against me.
Governor Byrne, your approval rating with us is 100%. Thank you.
Thank you.
And a half hour wasn't long enough for us to cover all the areas that he says might contribute to that mighty rise in favorables. And since Brendan isn't shy about his gubernatorial gains, just ask him, and he's likely to tell you about public financing of campaigns, introduction of the state lottery, voter registration by postcard, and major reform of the criminal code. And Raymond, if I might add two more, he is possessed of an extraordinary wife and really irresistible charm.
The charm is probably what enabled him to pull off a political miracle. Remember, he had casino development, controversial then, controversial now, taking place in a way that drove some development into the hearts of the Pinelands, where he also had the Pinelands Preservation Act, separately controversial because it froze the value of farmland at a time when he was pushing agriculture to remain high on the list of important industries in the state. All of that taken together suggests that he did a nimble political act, which is probably why he's still popular 25 years later.
And when you consider, Raymond, that this is a guy who was labeled OTB, one-term Byrne, you realize that this isn't just a really affable man, but a damn fine politician.
Sandy, that's why it was appropriate that we do this half hour. And with thanks to Brendan Byrne and Ruthie, that's it for this special edition of Due Process. But we'll be back here next week for more law and justice, the issues and the people. Till then, for Sandy and all of us here at Due Process, I'm Raymond Brown. Thanks for watching.
As I say, New Jersey just happens to be funnier than anybody. And so Oh, let me just close with one observation. It's just to show you this happens all the time in New Jersey. There was one time an argument in the city council in Newark, and one of the citizens stood up and said, I understand we sell water to the city of Elizabeth cheaper than we sell it to our own citizens in Newark. And Councilman Bontempo said, yeah, but the water we sell to Elizabeth is diluted.